Hey everybody, Adam here with Hometown Acres. Welcome back. I've got Tyler the logger here with me today. We're gonna walk back through our woods and kind of take a look at what we can do to properly manage our woods here, because we do have some things going on here that need to be taken care of. Tyler here is the expert. I had another logging operation come back here. You guys probably saw that video this winter. Offer me 40 grand to come back in here and take everything, I think 14 inches and bigger at the stump. And that would have just wrecked our woods. We would have never been able to cut this property again in my lifetime.
No, it would have been basically clear cut.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what we're going to do today, is walk back through here. When we showed you, Tyler's our new firewood log supplier. A lot of people said that they showed some interest in actually what Tyler does for a living and how he walks through a property, evaluates the woods and all that. So that's what we're going to be doing here today, and seeing what we can do here to improve the woods, not take out all the money trees, so that we can harvest again here responsibly in another 5 to 10 years. So this section of woods here is kind of like our grove of oaks that we've got growing here. We've got a lot of like 16, 18-inch oak trees if you look around. And now from my perspective, being the homeowner or the landowner, I would think I wouldn't really want to do anything with these trees because they're just starting to get valuable, right?
Right. I mean, there's always things to improve on. You know, you have a straight oak there and a crooked oak here. It's leaning all the way up and around, you know.
Yeah.
In the overall sale, things like that can be weeded out, and that's going to let a ton of light around here to help get some of these other ones to grow.
So I guess that's the biggest thing, is opening up the canopy.
Right, and if you don't want to cut, if you're not in it for the money, you're cutting to improve your woods. You know, there's two different points. You're in it for the money. Your overall property really probably isn't going to be the best. But if you're in it to manage your woods, your money's not going to be the same, but you're in it to manage the property and improve it. So in your improvement, you're going to take out the stuff that isn't as perfect as it can be. I mean, you want a nice straight tree with no defects, because any log buyer is going to buy it to the first defect.
Yeah.
So if you can weed some of that out now to help your straight ones really take off and grow, you know, that's where you're going to improve your whole stand.
And also that's going to be a little bit more regenerative, right? You're going to be able to come in here every 5 to 10 years as opposed to every 50 years by just taking out some of the smaller, less desirable trees. Now, I think you also mentioned you can, instead of timbering the whole, we've got about 30 acres of woods here. Instead of timbering all 30 acres, you said you could almost block it off like you would cattle farming, right? You know, you break the farm or the field into different padlocks and rotationally graze. You can do the same thing back here in the woods. What do you usually, on a 30-acre property, how many different sections would you break it up into?
Probably maybe 2, maybe 3, just depending on what you have going on. If you have a lot of grapevines, you know, that might be one area that you can work on and keep that in a block. Or, you know, if you have a big ravine or something, you have nice oaks growing in this side, but not so much nice oaks on this side.
Yeah.
You know, a bunch of maple. You know, let's try and sort some things out. So it really depends. There's no specific size, you know, you need a 5-acre block. You just how the lay of the land.
Yeah. So looking at this here, what are you kind of seeing here?
Bunch of maple understory, smaller maples, you know, your crooked oaks. Just down there, I seen one that, you know, had a big goober taken off the bottom. They got hit by something, all the bark's peeled off one side of the stump. You know, things like that. If you're not going to be in here wrecking your woods, running machines around, or 4-wheelers crashing into trees, you know, you can take those out, because, you know, the chance of it happening again, you know, you'll be safe to the next cut.
All right, so we were just in a section of woods that I thought is probably one of our cleaner, more valuable parts of the property as far as timber goes. This section here of woods is where I think where I'm going to need your expertise, and a lot of work is going to need to be done here, because there's a lot of soft maples, multiple stem trees that I don't think they're ever going to be worth anything except firewood. What do you think about this area here?
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. You know, like this soft maple here, the left side, that would go for firewood, but the right side, there is still saw logs in there, rod, but there's still usable saw timber in this side of the tree.
Yeah.
You know, the left side, you know, that's perfect for your firewood.
Now, what is people mill soft maple for? What is that used for?
Cabinets, you know, nicer furniture.
Really?
Like that. Yeah, there's like Middlefield. There's, I forget the name of the company out there, but they take tons and tons of soft maple furniture.
See, I would have thought hard maple would have been a lot better for mills. I thought soft maple was kind of a junkier.
Well, soft maple has a really nice white wood with a real nice small heart. So you get a lot of usable clear lumber.
Okay.
You know, the grain's, you know, not really visible. It's just nice white wood.
Yeah. Now, what about the understory here? All of these, this is a beech tree here, right? Yep. I've heard that beech is pretty bad in terms of managing your woods if you want to timber it, right?
Right. So if you come in here and took off, you know, all your saw timber size trees, 16, 18 up, you're going to put a lot of sunlight in here, and these beech will just take off and it'll cover the whole woods, and then you're back to the same problem, but worse, because now you have just thousands of little saplings.
Yeah.
You know, so we need to get rid of that as we go.
Now, what do you do to eradicate beech?
Really just chainsaw and your cutter.
Yeah.
You know? Like if I'm in the woods, like a game commission piece, they'll specify all beech, birch, or however they want it, needs to be cut to 1 inch or less.
Okay.
So you just go through with your saw. I mean, if we cut it with a machine, obviously it's easier, but.
Yeah. Do you guys have any forestry mulchers or anything like that for the skid steer or excavator or anything
we
like
do.
that? Yeah.
I mean, that's always an option. I mean, obviously, you need to look at the overall picture, whether timbering is better first or going in and mulching, you know, because the mulching end, if you do mulching, generally you're not going to be timbering at the same time because there's just too much going on in the woods.
Yeah.
Mulching costs money, timber you make money.
Okay. Now, when me and a couple of my buddies, we go out trail riding through the woods and stuff, we've seen on some of the neighboring properties, there's been trees that have been girdled. What do you know about girdling trees? Why do people do that? Because to me, it just seems like you cut 99% of the tree down, you're just waiting for somebody to walk under it and wind to catch it and kill somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to get some heat for it, but back in the day, you know, in the 80s and stuff, that was the thing. Because you didn't have all the technology you do now and the places to get rid of all wood products. So trees that you girdle weren't a marketable tree, or it was a species that you wanted to try and eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't of marketable size, or something wasn't good enough for it to be cut and pulled out of the woods.
Yeah, so it wasn't worth taking it out of the woods.
So they girdle it, but the problem with girdling is it doesn't really work. I mean, it works sometimes, but it's not 100% effective.
Now, for those of you who don't know what girdling is, explain what
So girdling is you just take your saw and, you know, I used to just cut 2 bands the whole way around the tree, cutting through the cambium layer. But it can seal, it can grow back, the tree can heal itself. So now I just cut them all down, and that'll either go for firewood or something of the sort.
Yeah.
I mean, we try and take as much as we can. I mean, there's no point leaving it in the woods.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't really care what comes out. I just want it to be, I want to be able to harvest again every 5 to 10 years, and I want the woods to kind of start looking nice. And I know that having the understory in here and all this stuff, this is actually signs of a healthy woods. Yeah. But I would like to be able to kind of look back through here and not have all of the invasive species, the autumn olive rose, the grapevines. Ideally, I'd like to have a whole bunch of nice straight trees here, and kind of everything else that isn't a nice straight looking tree, clear them out.
Yeah, I mean, just from how far we've gone, you need a management cut. You know, there's quake back there, there's goofy cherry trees that grow in corkscrews. There's some more sassafras into your dead standing ash. You know, those would be ones to go.
Yeah.
You know, that little soft maple back there, it's just firewood. But, you know, that is never going to grow to a nice log.
Yeah.
It's never going to pay you to keep that tree here. So those are things that I try and get rid of.
So as you're, because this is 30 acres, how do you tackle, I mean, I know you've got guys that work for you and stuff, but how do you even tackle just walking back through here and painting trees and stomping through the brush and keeping track of everything? How do you approach something like this?
Well, I use Onyx.
Okay, I use that too. It's actually a hunting app.
Yeah, so I have the Elite, and I just have all 50 states to go wherever. So my first day, I'll walk through a property with the landowner. Usually at that point, they're tired of walking with me. And then I'll start at one edge or a ravine or something, turn the tracker on, and just walk and start painting trees.
And marking the property line too.
Yep, and you can keep track, you know, if you see a hole in your tracks,
yeah,
you know, hey, there might not be anything there, but
now,
check it out.
If you get too close to a property line, you have to pay the other homeowner. Isn't there something you got to pay them like 2 or 3 times the value of that tree if you cut somebody else's tree?
Yeah, if you put a property line in wrong and you cut all the neighbors' trees or you cut all the line trees, yeah, you're going to get in some hot water over it. But, I mean, generally how I do property line trees, if they're leaning on my side, I'll cut them as long as it's not every one. You know, if there's something really great, you know, we'll talk with bordering neighbors, you know,
see if
make sure
they'll split the...
Yeah. And sometimes they even want to have their property looked at, you know.
So that'll actually work in your favor.
Right, so just make contact with them. It's easier to go ask and be like, hey, do you have any interest making money off your line trees?
Yeah.
If not, it's not a big deal because you're going to take yours anyway. You're entitled to them. So.
Yeah. What's, so looking at this property here, what's the first thing you recommend? Because I've talked to a couple other foresters and they said before you did any cutting, you'd have to get your invasive species under control, the beech, the grapevines, the autumn olive rose, because if you open up the canopy, like you said, all of that stuff is just going to take over.
Right.
So is it almost worth taking care of all of that understory first? That way when you open up the canopy, you don't just have a bigger mess on your hands 3 years down the road.
I mean, in a perfect world, yes, it would be most beneficial to come in here with a mulcher, go through and grind things up, get rid of all your vines, but the reality is nobody really wants to pay for that specifically.
Yeah.
So you work that in with your timbering to target.
So you can do it as you're actually pulling
I mean,
logs
it's not as precise as if you come in here, because there's nothing disturbed right now. So you could start at one edge of the property and work your way through, not working through a mess of treetops.
Yeah.
But as you're cutting it, you know, that's where you have to have good cutters and good skidder guys, you know, because skidder guys can run things over, push the blade over things, get rid of stuff. Your cutter, he comes through and takes all the saplings out because you don't want them just bent over.
Yeah.
Nobody likes walking through the woods with catapults.
Yeah.
You know, so
what about spraying? Instead of cutting everything down, actually spraying it and killing it.
Yeah, we do grapevines with like 2,4-D. There's a couple other different methods you can do. We spray with 2,4-D, you know, just cut a chunk out of it, spray both ends.
Yeah.
It's a pain.
Time consuming.
Yeah.
I've come back here every winter and I cut grapevines, and I'll do an acre or two every winter, and just doing it by myself, it's a pain. But
grapevines suck because they don't grow like a tree, so you can get pinched any which way because they twist.
You don't know where the tension and compression is on them.
So normal people don't want to justify that cost, even paying a crew of 3 or 4 guys to come stomp through woods and do that.
See, and me, I'd rather spend the money to clean the woods up and make it nice. And if I need to spend a little bit of money now to take care of all those invasive species so that in 5 years I can get a nice payday to come take some of the trees that we allowed to grow faster, more vigorously, I think it's an investment, not an expense.
I mean, it's totally, woods is totally what you put in it. I mean, the biggest direct reflection. If you don't do anything with the woods, you know it.
Yeah.
If you totally hammer woods and destroy it, you know, it'll show.
Yeah. All right, so as we were driving by, Tyler said, hang on, stop, let's talk about this beech tree here. So tell me what's going on with beech and why you don't want it on your property.
Well, this is exactly why, because out of the root system, it shoots up all the little sprouts and just totally plugs your whole woods out. You know, and that beech, it should still be solid. This beech, when they tend to get bigger, they usually grow hollow, and that's, you know, not good for anybody. A lot of people don't even like beech for firewood.
Yeah.
It's really heavy.
It's really heavy, but it burns hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see like this hickory is bending, trying to get up through the canopy and get around the top of that beech tree.
And yeah, you'd rather have the hickory than the beech tree.
Yep. Beech tree, you're just gonna make railroad ties out of it when it goes to the mill.
Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy when you actually see a big beech tree here and then see how far out the saplings and how thick they grow too. I mean, nothing else is going to grow in there except for those beech saplings.
No, so when we cut this down, to get rid of it, if you just cut them all off, cut the tree down, cut all the saplings off, they'll come back. It might take 3 years, but they'll come back. Then you just spray them with 2,4-D, and usually that takes care of it.
Yeah. So yeah, beech is no good for the woods. All right, so Tyler, this tree here, this is a heavy leaner. How would you take this one down? Because I wouldn't even attempt this one.
I would just put a little face cut in it, you know, like this. And then I would bore through the tree this way and bring it back. If I'm cutting it, I would be on that side, clear that deadfall out of the way, and just cut right through the back and exit that way. Because it's going to take off like a rocket. But don't set yourself up for failure. Bore through the tree and leave yourself a tab of hold wood. So you'll have a post on either side of your face cut. This will be cut clean through, and then you'll have a tab. And then you come through the back and clip the trigger and it'll take off.
And I think you were saying that the biggest thing with trees like this, when you've got a heavy canopy, is getting the tree on the ground and not getting it hung up in other trees, right?
Right. So sometimes I use that cut to my advantage. If I got a big fluffy canopy and I know it's going to want to snag, you know, I'll set it up so when I hit the trigger, the tree takes off instead of cutting through the back where it slowly falls. You know, clip the trigger and see you later.
You want to have some speed going down,
to break it through.
Yeah. Now, what were you saying about people like myself that go back in the woods and cut trees down for firewood?
Well, you see all the time, you know, homeowners, firewood guys, they just don't have the proper felling techniques, and it's amazing how people haven't got hurt. But there should be some type of, you know, by county class or something if you wanted to learn proper felling techniques. Hey, this is how you do this so you don't die, because I see stumps that I don't know how people haven't hurt themselves a lot on.
Sometimes it's better for somebody like me who doesn't know what they're doing just to walk away from trees like this and leave it to the professionals.
Right. I mean, there's no point in getting yourself hurt, because once it goes, you're not stopping it with anything. So
just
set it up so you know you're safe. Exit the uphill side, make sure it's not going to chase you, make sure you're not going to take off and have to run through that, you know.
Now
all of it.
The speed of the saw is actually a faster, more powerful saw, is a lot safer than a slower saw too, right?
Right. Sharper, safer. A dull saw, you know, you're asking, if you would just cut this straight through the back, it's going to barb your chair and blow up and probably wreck your saw. It could snag you up. So having a sharp saw but knowing how to use it will definitely be your friend. Just
because you can afford a 500i doesn't mean you should go out and buy one.
You don't need one.
All right, so if you guys remember a while back, we refinished off the back corner of our garage with cherry live edge slabs that we kind of shingled or sided the inside of the garage with. This is the cherry tree here. Now, this one didn't go exactly how I wanted to, but I got it on the ground safely. But I wanted to ask Tyler to rate my stump here on a scale of 1 to 10. What do you think of this?
I mean, I don't want to beat you up too hard, but I mean, from my end, we would have cut it lower. Just, you know, your best part of your tree is this half, you know. So we would have cut it as low as possible. I'd have probably used this root spur as my trigger.
Okay.
And like where it peeled this, when you put your face cut in, if you just clip through to your cambium layer on each side,
yeah,
that would have eliminated that. You know, and your height was a little bit off. But
yeah, so I put my face cut in here, and then I bored in the back, and then I came in on this side and started coming around, and I only had a 20-inch bar on, so as I was coming out, that's why this is here, because I didn't quite clear that, so that's why that pulled out, was because I didn't actually cut that, and so that just yanked it right out.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, And running a small bar, if you don't do it every day, like, you know, we run 20-inch bars, 24-inch bars, and you can cut big trees. But you got to be comfortable with it. So being consistent, you know, this face cut's a little angled, but if you would have lined up and bored through this way and your face cut was level, you could have bored through this way, you know, and intersected the two, even though your bar wasn't big enough to get through.
Yeah.
Because there's where your bar went.
Yep. That is the hardest part for me, and the most respect that I have for you guys that do this day in and day out is lining up your cuts, having your cut come in level, and then when you go to mate up that face cut, you bring the saw right in, and it just blows my mind how you're standing on this side of the tree, but you can line up the tip of your nose with this side over here, and then to line up the back cut, it's
just the more you do it. I mean, that's all there is to it. You're not going to be a good logger if you step into the woods tomorrow. I mean, it takes time, and there's no denying it.
Yeah.
But you got it on the ground. You didn't hurt yourself.
All right, so let's talk about what we could expect the woods to look like after you're done, because I've seen my neighbor's property, and granted, I don't think that logging crew had the best intentions for my neighbor's woods. He was just trying to get as much money out of it as he could. But as far as like trails and treetops, because I've always heard if you're going to go with a logger, find somebody that runs an Amish crew, because they use horses instead of skidders that tears up the trails less. But what do you say to all that?
I mean, for selected pieces of woods, horses are nice, you know, because they do make minimal damage. But there's a lot of things you can't do with horses. You know, if they get a tree stuck, it's more safety issues because they still have to pull it down. Where the skidder, we got 100 feet of winch cable, we can get away from it.
Yeah.
Horse cart, you're right here, you know, you're working at the tree. You know, they do generally make a little bit less of a mess, you know, because you're not taking a 60-foot tree out, you're taking a 10 or 20-foot section out.
Right.
So horses just aren't going to pull it. And as far as at the end, that's what really separates a crew from another crew. You know, we bring in dozers or excavators, whatever's needed, you know, to run over the trails, get all the tops off. And that's just have it in your contract. You know, you want all the usable wood taken to a size like 4-inch, I put in mine. You know, and the dozer work.
So all the treetops that are left, there won't be anything bigger than 4 inches left in the woods. Everything.
Not really. I mean, you'll still have some.
Yeah.
You know, but if I can get it, if I'm going to process a tree, I cut it down. I usually cut it off at the logs.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be, you know, one drag, and then we'll hook the top of the tree and take the scrag and the firewood out. So you'll break it into 2 halves just to keep it shorter.
Yeah.
But that's how you keep a woods neat and clean, is not taking it out in 60, 80 foot, 100 foot lengths.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to get that much out without hitting everything else on your way.
Now, since you do use a skidder, I mean, you can see from driving around through the woods here, we've got pretty nice ATV trails. I'd still want them to be intact. How bad is this skidder going to tear apart the trails, and then what can you use to put the trails back together when you're done?
Yeah, so I mean, during the process of the job, things are going to get rutted up. You know, there's going to be messes, and that's where working with your forester helps that. You know, I can say, hey, change the skid road, stop working because it rained for 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
you know, manage it that way. But you're still going to have ruts, you're still going to have all the usage of the road, but bringing a dozer in at the end, grading the road out, you know, putting water bars in, making sure there's no holes for standing water. I mean, that's just...
So they'd be better than what they are now.
Yeah, they'd be, you know, 8-10 foot wide. You'd be able to drive a truck through here. Because
Okay.
you're going to have sunlight too, and it's going to dry everything up.
Yeah, that's true. You're going to open the canopy up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest concerns, was what, because like I said, I saw my neighbor's property. He got, you know, 5 or 6 grand to timber his property, and he probably has, you know, $30,000 worth of cleanup that he'd have to do over there. So he actually lost money on timbering his property.
Right.
I don't want to be in that situation.
You know, and just because the skidder has a blade on it, it's not a dozer. They don't run the same. They don't work the same. I mean, you can do it with a skidder, but to get a nice, clean, finished result, you know, a dozer, an excavator if you have to.
Now, do you use a dozer on every job when you're done?
Most every job of some kind.
Yeah.
You know, or if we can get it with a skid steer, if there's no stumps, or if it's just nice straight skid roads. You know, a lot of times we can do it with a small machine, but if you need a dozer, you need a dozer. I mean,
Yeah.
you should have it all laid out before you start to
Yeah.
plan it.
So since we got Tyler the logger here, he brought some toys with him. He's got the Steel 500i over there. We got Doug in the excavator bringing a log over. I'm gonna try out the 500i, and Tyler's gonna try out the Eastimate Axis. He likes to play with toys too. Now Tyler, what'd you say you have on this? Just a bark box and an air filter, right?
Yep, West Coast Saw bark box and the Jason Egan air filter.
All right, let's get it fired up and try it out. All right, fuel injected. All right, so we got that whole tree cut up there. Now it's Tyler's turn to play. Let's go ahead and fire up the axis here. On, choke it, throttle up, and give her a tug. Yep, foot pedal down there. So if you look on the wedge up here, it's got a blunt edge right up against there, so I usually back the piece of wood out about an inch from that backstop there. Otherwise it just mushes it.
That's a little easier.
Yeah.
A little more efficient.
Keep it all together as long as you can and just keep turning it.
Yeah.
And it gives you really good looking firewood too.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, that's almost like a 4x4.
Yeah.
So Tyler, what'd you think of the Eastimate Axis?
Well, it sure is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same with that Steel 500i. Tell you what, you put those two together, you got a firewood operation. Anyway, I think that's gonna about wrap this one up. I wanna thank Tyler for coming out here and walking through the woods with us and showing us a couple things about what we could possibly do to properly manage the woods. Maybe we'll even have Tyler come out here and do some of that work. But if you enjoyed this one, I'll put a link to Tyler's business here. Click that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.